one of the ways that we can use the present subjunctive is if we have a trigger word, a K, and a change of person. And if you have all three of these things, what do you win? You win the subjunctive. Just a quick refresher, what is the trigger word? Or where does it happen? The trigger word will be to the left of the K. You need a K and a change of person from the one to the other. So for the next few lessons, what we're going to look at are what are some of our different trigger words. And trigger words will always be verbs. And a teacher friend of mine gave me this acronym, WEIRDO. And this includes a whole bunch of different trigger words. And so what she said, if you can remember these, or synonyms of these words, then that'll help. So W is if we have a verb that is a want, a wish, or a desire. An E would be an emotion. I, impersonal expression. A request or a recommendation. D stands for doubt or denial. And O stands for Ojala. So what we're going to do now is we're going to take each one of these individually, and we're going to look at them and see what are some of these words that we can use to replace quiero. So quiero is a trigger word, and which one would it fall under? Well, that would fall under a W. So what we can do is we can replace that trigger word with a different trigger word. When we're considering some of the trigger words that we could fall under the W category or the want, wish, or desire, we want to think about what are some verbs that we could put in there. Well, for sure we know querer, to want, to wish, to hope, to prefer. And so what you want to think about are what are some of the verbs that you could use that would mean about the same thing. For our trigger words that start with E, we have an emotion. And so some of these would sound like, I'm afraid that. Or I'm happy that. And I'm putting all of these into the yo form, but these could be in any person. It surprises me that. So anything that you could think as an emotion, it's sad that, or I'm sad that. And so what are some of these that we could look like? So this right here, tengo miedo de que, I'm afraid, we could replace with this trigger word up here, and this is a trigger word. Or we could say, I like that. That's an emotion. And that is another trigger word. And if we have the rest of the things, the trigger word, the K, the change of person, then we can move forward with that. When we're working with I of the trigger words or the impersonal expressions, what that is when we have a form of ser, S, and then a word out here. And let me give you a few examples. So it's important that, it's good that, it's bad that, it's incredible that, it is scary that, it is interesting that, it is wonderful that. And so those are quite a few that you could look in there to put in. Now, when we are working with the impersonal expressions, we need to remember that it always has the rest of the things. So not only do we have our trigger word, then we want to go through and make sure we have our K. And then our change of person is, well, this isn't really a person. So whatever it changes to, as long as it changes to something, will work out just fine. When we're thinking about R, or our request or recommendation, well, what would the easiest be? I recommend that. I ask that. Think about it this way. If your mother came to you and said, I need you to clean your room, is she giving you that option? No, she's pretty much requesting that you do that. If she says, I recommend that you clean your room, is she just saying, no, that might be nice? No, she's telling you. She is wanting, wishing, desiring. So anything that comes under the R, if you can think about, is this a request or a recommendation? Another one, I insist. I insist that you clean your room. Well, depending on how strong you want that to be or how that sounds, is what you could have. Or another one maybe, I suggest. And again, I'm putting each of these into the yo form just for simplicity because our trigger word up here is in the yo form. So we could take out quiero que hables español and we could say recomiendo que hables español. And that's a trigger word. Trigger word, K, change of person, D, doubt or denial for our trigger word. So we're trying to think about what are other words instead of quiero that we can put in here. So I doubt that. I deny that. I don't believe that. I don't think that. So any of these that would put some doubt on a situation. Now, when we're working with D, the doubt or denial, we do have some amigos falsos. We do have some false friends that aren't really looking out for our best interest, and they're going to try to trick us into thinking that they're trigger words, but they're not really trigger words. What are these false trigger words? And you know what? I'm going to put them in their own box because I don't want these false friends to get out of this box. We need to keep them in their special place. So some false trigger words are creo or pienso. Now if you'll look, I don't believe that and I don't think that, those are trigger words because there exists a little bit of doubt. But when they're in the affirmative, they are a part of our false friend. They are not trigger words. Another one that we need to be real careful of is we have I doubt, and that's a trigger word. But if we have I don't doubt, that again is one of our false triggers. One more that we could put in here would be estoy seguro. I am sure that. Well, if you're sure, then there's no doubt or denial. And so what would be a trigger word is if you said, no estoy seguro. Now, these are just a few of the trigger words that come under the doubt or denial category. And what you have to do is put on your thinking cap and figure out, well, what ones are false friends and what ones are not. And the final trigger word that we want to look at is our trigger word O. And again, we're trying to find other words that can replace our trigger word quiero in our model sentence. And the final one is Ojala. And that's literally the word that we have. Sometimes when we're using Ojala, I don't know why, but sometimes the K, they don't put it in there. So don't get too worried about that if you don't see the K. But when you see Ojala, go ahead and put it in the subjunctive. So today, we've been talking about trigger words. And there are a lot of trigger words, and so you have to figure out a way to memorize them. But what I would do is just start with one letter at a time. Start with your W today, and think about all the different kinds of verbs that you could replace and put in here for a new trigger word. And then go on to your E, your I, your R, your D, and your O. Now remember, there are lots of ways to use the subjunctive. This is one of those ways. A trigger word, a K, and a change of person. If you have all three of those things, subjunctive. Alright, go out and try a few on your own. Let me know how it goes. Suerte.